Goku is the undisputed GOAT of anime transformations. His Super Saiyan transformation against Frieza back in Dragon Ball Z has been parodied and referenced countless times throughout different forms of media over the years. His Ultra Instinct transformation in Dragon Ball Super broke both legal and illegal anime streaming sites across the internet on its initial debut. And now, in the modern era, Goku's Super Saiyan 4 transformation in Dragon Ball Daima has once again broken the internet, while simultaneously giving Dragon Ball one of its highest rated episodes in the entire franchise. It's safe to say that Goku's transformations throughout all of Dragon Ball are the most iconic of all time. But not all of them were created equal. So we created a list of every single Goku transformation and ranked them, from Z tier being the most iconic and recognizable transformations, to F tier being the absolute worst and forgettable transformations. Let us know what your favorite Goku transformation is, and let's get into it. Starting off, we have base Goku. This is the version of Goku that like everybody knows. If you've clicked on this video not knowing a single thing about Goku, you have at least seen this version of him. Base form Goku, of course, premiered in the very first episode of Dragon Ball, and for that, of course, Goku goes into Z tier without any hesitation, no questions asked. Oozaru, or Great Ape, as some people know. This debuted for the very first time in Dragon Ball when Goku looks at the moon in episode 12 and turns into the big monkey that destroys Pilaf's castle as Pilaf gathers the Dragon Balls to try to make a wish, which ends up turning into a pair of panties. And I also love that the Oozaru form was actually explained in Dragon Ball Z as part of like Saiyan heritage, rather than it just being that like Kid Goku just transformed into a big monkey just because he felt like it. But as far as what the Oozaru actually is, it's just a big monkey that gives you like insane strength and power. We see Gohan do this, we see Vegeta do it, a bunch of other Saiyans can do it. I think it's a very okay form. It is the first of many, but I don't think I can put it any higher than A tier. The Kaioken. The Kaioken showed up for the first time in 1989 in the 23rd episode of Dragon Ball Z. Goku learns it from King Kai while he's dead. The Kaioken is essentially a power level scaler, and so you can do Kaioken times 2, 3, 4, we see up to 20, and I think maybe even 50 in the actual show. To me, the red aura has always been really sick, and this is also the form that Goku fights Vegeta with. He also fights a bunch of people on Namek using it. I love the Kaioken, and I would easily put it up into S tier. False Super Saiyan. We first see this form in Dragon Ball Z during the Lord Slug movie that came out in 1991. It's like a different version of Super Saiyan because Super Saiyan wasn't out yet. So because it wasn't animated yet, they didn't know what colors Super Saiyan was going to be because the manga is in black and white. So this movie kind of just took its own liberties and was like, okay, this is what Super Saiyan's supposed to be like. But then fans just ended up calling this False Super Saiyan once Super Saiyan actually was animated in the actual show. There is another version of False Super Saiyan that appears in the Otherworld Tournament arc, which is filler, where Goku's fighting all of his past enemies like Frieza and Cell, and he powers up into what's supposed to be Super Saiyan, but Paikon's not supposed to know that Goku has Super Saiyan, so the animators recolored it to where Goku looks like he's Super Saiyan, but it still has black hair. As far as the form goes and the way that it looks, False Super Saiyan is a little bit of a fraud because even though Goku powers up to get this form, Lord Slug still kicks his ass in the movie, which is kind of funny to see. However, they're just being like a False Super Saiyan thing that just exists anyway is kind of cool to me, and I've always thought it was a really cool design, so I'd put it into S tier. Super Saiyan. Of course, everybody knows Super Saiyan. This debuted in the 95th episode of Dragon Ball Z against Frieza, when Krillin gets blown up by Frieza and Goku snaps and turns into the Super Saiyan that's been built up and talked about throughout the entire Namek arc. Mwah! That's that chef's kiss writing right there. It's beautiful. It's a great episode, and this is, without a doubt, the most iconic anime transformation of all time. It's been parodied and redone so many different times, like not even just other anime, but like there are actual like TV shows and other cartoons that use the Super Saiyan motif. I would go as far as to say that Super Saiyan is like the most important thing to come out of Dragon Ball. And with that said, Super Saiyan does not go anywhere below Z tier. I give Super Saiyan the highest Z tier I could. It is that important to Dragon Ball and anime as a whole. Super Saiyan Grade 3. Goku shows this form off during the Cell arc when he's training with Gohan in the hyperbolic time chamber. This is also the form that Trunks uses against Cell and then realizes it's big and bulky and lacks speed. Goku finds this out in the hyperbolic time chamber before ever actually trying to use it, which makes him actually goated because he realizes his mistakes before he even makes them. And I don't think it does a whole lot for most fans. I don't even know if most fans know that Goku even went into this form. I would confidently put this form into C tier because it doesn't really do a whole lot in the series, and it really doesn't serve a purpose outside of just being something that needs to be scaled beyond. Super Saiyan 2. The first time that we see Goku use Super Saiyan 2 is in the 220 29th episode of Dragon Ball Z when he's about to fight Vegeta. Super Saiyan 2 is really underutilized by Goku. It's just a stepping stone to get to Super Saiyan 3, and we all know who the real GOAT of Super Saiyan 2 is, that being Gohan. There's no one that does Super Saiyan 2 better. As far as Goku goes, it's really forgettable. I think visually it looks really cool, but it's really underutilized and it really doesn't serve a purpose other than, like I said, being a stepping stone. So I'd put it into B tier for just kind of being midway, nothing really crazy. I don't love it, I don't hate it, but it's a solid B tier. Super Saiyan 3. The first time we ever see Super Saiyan 3 is in the 245th episode of Dragon Ball Z, which is not too long after we see Super Saiyan 2 for the first time. Goku's in front of Babidi and Boo, and he hits his iconic line of like, you know, this is how to go even further beyond! And then he starts screaming, and like the whole earth starts shaking, and he goes Super Saiyan 3 for the first time, and that first debut is great, but the form really isn't anything crazy outside of those like appearances. Like the transformation sequence itself is great, but it kind of just gets sidelined very quickly as the series goes on. The reason why the form gets sidelined is because it apparently drains stamina super quickly, but for me, I don't care about that. I think visually, the Super Saiyan 3 looks super sick, and seeing that for the first time when I was a kid, watching through Dragon Ball Z in its entirety as I was binging it, this was a super hype moment for me. The soundtrack for this as well, on the Bruce Faulkner score, it is like one of my favorite tracks from that score of all time. Super Saiyan 100. Obviously, this is a fake form, but I wanted to include it because it's something that like all of us looked up as a kid. You know, we'd all heard about Super Saiyan 5, and like we're like, oh, how far does it go when it comes to like fan-made things? And you'd find this image, like this is a super iconic image for Super Saiyan 100. It's not even something that I can really rank, but it's so ridiculous that I can't not put it into S tier just because it's so silly and dumb. I'm sure some of you watching this video have seen this image, especially when you were a kid looking up random Super Saiyan forms. Super Saiyan God. We first saw this form in 2013 during Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. Yes, it's called Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods. It was before Super came out. Now, I don't know how much of a hot take this is, but I actually prefer Super Saiyan God over Super Saiyan Blue. My biggest wish for this entire series, if Dragon Ball was ever redone entirely, I love the concept of Super Saiyan God, but Super Saiyan Blue just kind of ruins that. I think they needed to choose one or the other and not have both, because having both just kind of makes it a muddled mess. I personally think Super Saiyan God is S tier, because when it premiered, it was like a Goku transformation signifying that we are literally so back. And then we have Super Saiyan Blue. This debuted in 2015 during Resurrection F, just 2 years after we saw Battle of Gods. And like I said before, I'm not the biggest fan of Super Saiyan Blue. I don't know how hot of a take that is, but I think it's like ridiculously overused in the anime. I think a blue Super Saiyan looks really cool, kind of like Broly when he's like restrained in his Super Saiyan form and his hair turns blue. Visually, it looks great, but I think it shafting Super Saiyan God has always kind of made me mad. And because of that, I would put Super Saiyan Blue into A tier. Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken. I thought it was really cool if they stacked Super Saiyan Blue's God Ki with Kaioken's aura. It looked really cool visually, but I think overall, I think Super Saiyan Blue mixing in Kaioken with it deserves S tier as well. And I'm starting to stack up this S tier a little bit, and I'm starting to feel bad because it makes me seem like I'm just a Goku glazer, but at the same time, these forms are sauced. Perfected Super Saiyan Blue. For me, Super Saiyan Blue Perfected is kind of just the same thing as Super Saiyan Blue. Like, yeah, there's a color grade difference, but I think it's kind of the same thing as Super Saiyan Blue in general. Like, most people really can't discern the difference anyway. Super Saiyan Rose. We first see this form in episode 56 of Dragon Ball Super, and it's like the equivalent of Super Saiyan God, but for Goku Black, who is also fused with Zamasu. For me, Super Saiyan Rose is one of my favorite designs in the entire series, especially with the way that Goku Black dresses. It just works super well. I think some might disagree with me on this, but I would actually put Super Saiyan Rose into Z tier. And I can admit that's purely because of my own bias and because I love the color pink. Ultra Instinct Sign/Omen. When Ultra Instinct was introduced for the very first time, it broke streaming sites, both illegal and legal. It was that big of a transformation. In the current Dragon Ball timeline, this is like the top tier form that Goku has in the series. UI Sign's importance to Dragon Ball as a whole cannot be understated. Everybody has heard the UI soundtrack at some point. So without a doubt, UI Sign has to go into Z tier. Mastered Ultra Instinct. I love this form. I love that Goku Goku has white hair. And I think one of the things that I love about Ultra Instinct that I didn't mention before is that it just fits Goku's character to have a technique that's not reliant on being a Saiyan, but rather fits the way that Goku is molded as a character throughout Dragon Ball. But I think it's really good that two of our central characters have transformations that are based on their actual personalities, rather than it being something from like Saiyan heritage that they kind of inadvertently inherited by just being part of a race. Mastered Ultra Instinct, the way it looks is beautiful. Thematically, it's fantastic. I would put it up into Z tier as well with Ultra Instinct Sign / Omen. Ultra Instinct Giant. I think it's kind of boring that Dragon Ball ends up going back to like, ooh, this guy's just really big, so he's really powerful. This form appears in the Moro arc during the manga, and Goku just gets huge with his Ultra Instinct form to match Moro's size. And while it's cool that this can happen with Ultra Instinct, I don't love that characters can just become giants, and I just kind of hate the trope in Dragon Ball where like somebody gets big just to show that they're powerful. Like that happens in Daima, and I'm not a huge fan of that either. Ultra Instinct Giant, though it's cool to know that Goku can do that, I guess, I would put it into B tier. True Ultra Instinct. I don't love this form as much as the other ones. I really kind of hate that they go back to the black hair, but I think Mastered Ultra Instinct with the white hair is just such a good look that going back to the black hair really ruins it for me. I'd put this one into A tier because I don't love it visually, but I also just don't hate it. It's like, it's still Ultra Instinct, it's just not my favorite version of it, you know what I mean? GT Base. Now, a lot of people hate GT, and don't get me wrong, I understand where the disdain comes from, but I actually think that GT Base Goku gets a lot of flack for no reason. One of the things that I've always kind of liked about GT Base Goku is that he's wearing his original gi. He's got the different pants on, but it's still kind of his original gi from when he's a kid. Like, Goku can still act like an adult despite being a kid, which is one of the good things that I like about GT in comparison to Daima. Because in Daima, Goku feels more like a kid rather than being an adult that was turned into a kid, which is what I will say I think GT did much better. As far as the transformation of Goku being an adult into a kid, I would say GT Base Goku, I could solidly put into B tier. It's not really a transformation, it's just him being shrunk down into a kid, similar to Daima. GT Super Saiyan. Now, GT Super Saiyan is basically the exact same thing as regular Super Saiyan, except he's a kid, so it's kind of like Goten going Super Saiyan. We've already seen Goku go Super Saiyan before, and it's not nearly as iconic, so I'd put Super Saiyan from GT into B tier as well. I don't love it, and I don't hate it, but I think it's like about mid tier. I couldn't put it up there with Super Saiyan Blue because that would be criminal. GT Super Saiyan 3. Again, it's a form that we've already seen Goku do. Again, I'd put it into B tier with the other GT forms. Golden Uzaru. We see this form debut on the 34th episode of Dragon Ball GT. One of the cool things about Golden Uzaru is that in Dragon Ball Z, the Golden Uzaru is mentioned to be part of like the Saiyan mythology. And so here in the baby arc of Dragon Ball GT, we actually see it come to fruition. However, I hate the way that it looks so much. I'm personally not a fan of it. I think the design kind of sucks. I think some people might like it, but realistically, I think Golden Uzaru sticks around for like a couple minutes, and that's really all I needed to see of it. I'd put this form into like C tier. I don't love looking at it. Super Saiyan 4. This debuted in the exact same episode that Golden Uzaru did, and what can I say about Super Saiyan 4? It just recently got recanonized in Dragon Ball Daima, and don't worry, that version of it is on this tier list as well, but this version I actually love so much. Super Saiyan 4 is one of my favorite transformations in Dragon Ball of all time. I think the best part about Super Saiyan 4 is that it goes back to the roots of transforming into an Uzaru and then like kind of taking control of that and harnessing the power of the Uzaru. It really does give meaning to Goku being turned into a kid again because it goes back to Goku's first transformation into an Uzaru from original Dragon Ball. And with that being said, the design is super sick. The transformation sequence is like super sick. There's just so many things to love about this form when it originally was introduced, and I can't help but put it into Z tier. There are so many Z tier transformations! Super Saiyan 5. This is from Dragon Ball AF, and I believe it was created by Toyotaro, who is the successor to the Dragon Ball manga now that Toriyama has passed away. Rest in peace. I remember looking up videos about Super Saiyan 5 and getting clickbaited a billion times over, but still clicking on the same videos because I really wanted to know if this ever was gonna happen. The design is super crazy. It's like Super Saiyan 4 on drugs, but like you could say that Super Saiyan 3 is like Super Saiyan 2 and 1 on drugs as well. So it's really not out of the realm of possibility that this could be the actual version of Super Saiyan 5 if it was ever canonized. I would put Super Saiyan 5 into S tier for just being something that's a staple in the Dragon Ball community. We all speculated about about seeing it back in the day, and you can't put it any lower than that. Den Goku. This is when Goku was thinking about fusing with Dende because he had no other options after Gohan got absorbed. I think this form looks really cursed. It goes into F tier, and that's the very first one on this entire tier list. Goku. I love the idea of Goku. It is, again, when Goku's looking around on who he can fuse with because Gohan dropped the earring and got absorbed by Majin Buu, but I can't lie to you, I love the concept of Goku and Mr. Satan fusing, essentially like the strongest character and the weakest character that we know of. Gokhan. I hate that name. Like, this name sucks. Like, I don't know if there's another alternative name that Goku and Gohan would have combined to make, but this one's just kind of weird. I think all of us wanted to see what would happen if Goku and Gohan actually did combine, and it's kind of an underrated concept. Like, none of the games have any what-if fusions of what if this actually was successful, so I don't know why it's never been a thing, but I do wish I could see it, and I would also put this into A tier as well. The live-action Uzaru. It's from Dragon Ball Evolution, and we all know where these go. You know what I'm saying? We all know. We all know. Gogeta Z. This fusion first appears in the 1995 movie Dragon Ball Z Fusion Reborn. As we all probably know, this is the version that fights Janemba. It's the Meta Maurice fusion between Goku and Vegeta when they combine, doing the same thing that Trunks and Goten do to create Gotenks. Gogeta is a fan favorite character similar to Vegito. Both of them are iconic, both of them are fantastic. I do love Vegito a little bit more, but I think Gogeta Z, as far as base and his Super Saiyan form go, I think those deserve S tier without a doubt. The same would go for the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie version of Gogeta as well. I think those deserve S tier equally, just as much as the other ones. Gogeta Super Saiyan Blue, I think deserves a little higher just because of how sauced he is in that movie and because the animation is beautiful. That's a Z tier for sure. Then we have Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta Limit Breaker. This list is missing Goku Super Saiyan 4 Limit Breaker and Vegito Super Saiyan 4 Limit Breaker, but the good thing about that is that I think I can encompass all of them into kind of the same thing because they all look very similar and they all kind of do the same thing in Dragon Ball Heroes. I think Limit Breaker is a cool concept, but I think in Heroes they kind of just start doing whatever they want and there's no real like substance to it, dare I say. So I think with that, I would put all of the forms that I just mentioned into a solid A tier. Like, yeah, they look cool, but it's also from Heroes, so it's Gogeta Super Saiyan 4. Now, I'm not gonna deny, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta is carried heavily by his actions in all of the video games. He appears in episode 60 of Dragon Ball GT, and in the actual show, he doesn't really do anything, and he kind of just messes around and wastes time while fighting Omega Shenron, and then eventually the time limit for the actual fusion runs out, Goku and Vegeta split, and it's cooked. In the anime himself, Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta is really underwhelming, but then in the games, he puts belt to ass. I would put Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta into Z tier, but because of his actual portrayal in the show, I have to put him into S, even though S is still pretty good. Mondongo. It's just bald Goku, dude. It's C tier. Vegito. Oh man, I will always love Vegito more than I will love Gogeta, but that's only because I was exposed to Vegito first when reading the manga. I had no idea that there was even a fusion in Dragon Ball until I read the manga for the very first time. And seeing that panel where they first fused together, mwah, that's that chef's kiss, baby. I would still put Vegito into S tier, but I think it's just higher than Gogeta, in my opinion. I know that might make some people mad, but I stand by it. Vegito will always be my favorite Dragon Ball fusion. Goku Mini Daima Base. So I talked about GT Goku and how they made it okay for him turning into a kid. As far as Daima goes, I think they leaned way too hard with Goku being an actual kid when he's turned into a kid, rather than being an adult stuck in a kid's body. And for that reason, I don't really love Daima Goku in his base form that much. I would still put him next to GT Goku, but I would still say that Kid Goku in GT is a little bit better portrayed than the version that we see in Daima. The Demon Ears. We see this transformation happen in, like, I think episode 3 or 4 of Dragon Ball Daima, and Supreme Kai just gives Goku some demon ears so that way, like, nobody suspects that he's from outside. But then, for some reason, the Supreme Kai just takes it away rather than keeping Goku with the demon ears the whole time. It doesn't make any sense, but it's a fun little gag to see. I think I would put this into C tier just because it's changing his ears. Daima Mini Super Saiyan. And this version of Kid Goku as Super Saiyan actually gets a lot of cool moments in the show. I'd put this version into A tier. Daima Mini Super Saiyan 2. Kind of the same thing as his actual Super Saiyan 2 when he's an adult. We don't really see it do anything. I'd say this is like a B tier as well. Still cool to see that he gets that form as a kid, because I think they skip over it in GT, but B tier for sure. Mini Daima Super Saiyan 3. I actually didn't think that this show was going to reintroduce Super Saiyan 3, but then they actually do in like the very last last few episodes of Dragon Ball Daima, I would put this form into A tier as well because it actually has like some good fight moments in it. Daima Mini Super Saiyan 4. This is the moment you've been waiting for. It's what everybody's been talking about for the entire last week. If you haven't seen the end of Daima, I would cover your ears or go watch it right now. But I do really cannot overstate, really hate that apparently Goku has just had Super Saiyan 4 since the beginning of Dragon Ball Daima. Yes, that is correct. It is awakened by a character named Neva that lives in the demon realm and kind of like awakens the untapped power that Goku has. But Goku also states to Vegeta during the final episode that he's kind of just had it and didn't know if the form would work, which kind of breaks everything in continuity given that this takes place before Super and before the Super Saiyan God is introduced and before Beerus is introduced. Like while Goku is fighting Beerus, he says that the Super Saiyan 3 is his final form and he has nothing beyond that. If it turns out that Daima is its own separate continuity from Dragon Ball Super, I'm totally fine with that. But this show does introduce a gaping plot hole, no matter how much you like. But as far as character design goes and where I would rank it, I'm so unbelievably happy that Super Saiyan 4 was recanonized. I'm just happy that I got to see it on my screen. And I also didn't get this spoiled for me. I literally didn't see it coming, and I'm so glad I got to experience that without having anything spoiled for me. I love that Super Saiyan 4 is given to a small version of Goku. I love that he's got big hands. I love that his hair is all red, despite it looking similar to Super Saiyan God, which happens just only a few years later and nobody mentions it. I don't care how much of an ass pull you might want to call it. I'm putting it into Z tier. It broke the internet. It broke Crunchyroll. It's so good. I'm glazing. I don't care. It is a Krispy Kreme donut factory in this video. I am laying the glaze on heavy. It's so good. And then we have Daima Base Goku. I love his animation, but I think Daima Base Goku is kind of just the same thing as regular Base Goku, but I think a little less iconic because he's not wearing the exact same clothes. I'd put it into S tier, but only because he's wearing a slightly different gi that's not as iconic as his original ones that we see in Z and Super and everywhere else. And then we have all of adult Goku's transformations. We have Daima Super Saiyan, which I would put into S tier just because it looks beautiful, and it's the same Super Saiyan that we've seen before, except it's not in the same context of transformation that we see the original one happen in. Super Saiyan 2. Super Saiyan 2 I could also put up into S tier, and Super Saiyan 3, of course, also in S tier as well. This is the best that these forms have ever looked visually. Dragon Ball Daima did an excellent job at pulling out the stops when it came to the animation quality of this show. It simply looks too good. And finally, we have adult Daima Super Saiyan 4 Goku. I love this form so much. I love the way that this form looks, but I don't love it as much as the form in GT, and I'll explain why. At least in GT, we got the roots of the Saiyan mythology connected to Super Saiyan 4. It harnessed the power of Uzaru to become like a Super Saiyan Primal, like Super Saiyan 4 kind of character, whereas in Daima, Super Saiyan 4 is just kind of like the next step up from Super Saiyan 3. There's no like connection anywhere necessarily, which I kind of hate. And I think the black hair kind of staying the same as what Goku started with really works with that whole like primal idea. Whereas like the red hair in this, especially if it's going to attempt to connect to Super, I think it's a little confusing with Super Saiyan God, which only comes a couple years later in the actual timeline of Dragon Ball. However, I still do think Dragon Ball Daima's Super Saiyan 4 is fantastic and still does deserve Z tier no matter what. And with that, that is literally every transformation Goku has ever gone through, ranked from Z to F. Let me know how you would have ranked these. Let me know which is your favorite Goku transformation, and I will see you in the next video, but be sure to like and subscribe until then.